I always had a fascination for those moving cranes. I even had the opportunity to have for 3 days one at my place, but of course it was a much smaller one. I had to do some work into the garden. It's Christian from Vision 6D. I hope you are fine. And we are going to look at how to build with MS Project phased projects. We are going from scratch to a well-developed project. I'm now going to open a new project. And we said that we are going with phases. So I will create phase, why not 0, and then phase 1, phase 2, and you guessed it, phase 3. Depending on the complexity, if you have a simple project, you can just have one phase. In each phase, I will do something that is quite unique. But one thing is sure, it's that between each phase, I have to do some checks, to do some controls. So I will key in simply control A, which is a control. Maybe I add 2 other controls. Like that, now I have 3 different controls. So we said that those 3 controls, they are part of the phase, the first one. The one which is the phase 0. So I will ident those tasks like that. We see that they belong to phase 0. And in any phase, you have also another task or a general function here, which is initiation. We call this initiation of the phase. Once we've done the initiation of the phase, in each phase there is also a part which is called planning. I will simplify this by calling it plan. And then we have to do something in this phase. So I will call this do something, or it's the execution part in this phase. In many projects, what is done in the first phase or the phase 0 is a feasibility study. So I've said here that we have 3 different controls. So I will group this under a common task or a summary task, which will be called control. And once we are at the end of a phase, we'll have something which is called a phase review. A phase review is a moment when we decide, according to the results of the phase, according to the deliverables of the phase, whether we go to the next phase, whether we are at the end of the project since there was maybe just one phase, or whether we stop the project. So we said here that there is a deliverable. I added a deliverable from the phase. In the case of a feasibility study, it could be the study itself, either as a document or a presentation. So now let's organize a bit this plan within the phase. So for example here, if I select the 3 controls here, I can say that there is a summary task, which is the control, and I performed an indentation to show this. The phase deliverable, I leave it as such. And in the phase review, I will add 1 point as a form, in the form of a task, which is the go/no-go to the next phase. And this, I will mark it as a milestone. And for this, I define it as a 0-day duration. Like that, we have here on the Gantt chart a milestone for this part. So the phase review, we will also ident the go, no go, which is the decision that comes out of the phase review. When you are initiating a project, it's always important to identify the stakeholders. Another thing that you will have to do is the project charter. In many projects that I followed, there were no project charter. I will now say that to identify the stakeholders and the project charter are steps of initiation in that phase. For this, I will increment them, I will ident them, and then in the plan here, I will put something in that first phase, which is macro planning. And since it's part of the plan, I will also ident it. So you start to see that we have here an initiation, planning, and here we have execution. And for example, here I will insert a task, and in which I will say feasibility study. Why not? And this, of course, is part of the execution. So I ident it once more. And now we see coming out initiation, planning, execution, and a control, and then at the end a phase review to get the go, no go to go to the next phase. So what we are missing here is that at one point this phase will be closed. So there is something called closing, which we have here. So if you are following project management preparation exams or CAPM exams, you will recognize here the 5 main processes: initiation, plan, execution, control, and closing at the end. These are the typical components and typical processes which are part of project management. I've added also here down a closing meeting, which is part of closing, last process, which is here. And now if I go into control A, B, and C, you see those 3 controls. I will add something on top of it because all those controls, they are in fact the key performance indicators of this phase. And I will say that the controls, the elements of control are idented, and like that you directly find the key performance indicators. What I will also add now is a risk analysis that you also perform here into the control, but this is not part of the KPIs. And another point which is important also to understand, it's that you will need a budget for the next phase, and in order to do a budget you will need to do first cost estimations to get to the budget. Like that, you find elements which are really important, which are the key performance indicators, a risk analysis here, and cost estimation to lead to a budget. Like that, you have all the elements that are necessary for a phase. I will also define the phase deliverable as a milestone, and for this I can simply go on it, into information, and here into advanced, I can mark the task as a milestone. This is a different way to do it. A feasibility study is here maybe to show whether the product or the service is bringing a lot of value to the company, a lot of value to the customers, maybe also to see whether it follows governmental rules and guidelines. So we will be now in a situation where we admit that our feasibility study might have lasted, let's say, 4 weeks. So we have here in the Gantt chart a duration of 4 weeks that appears. I won't enter and plan all the details of this. All what I will say here is that the phase review is following the feasibility study. And for this, I'm just going to say that the predecessor is the number 9, which is here. To have an automatic positioning of that element, I will switch to auto-schedule tasks. Now we have a better view of the project, which is here. So of course, I would have to detail and to do the planning of all the elements. But I think here what is important is to understand how is composed a phase, to understand that some small projects are just composed of one phase. You could have here all the elements of a small project where the feasibility study might be replaced by design, coding, testing, and implementing, for example. So now our project has the deliverable, the feasibility study is done. It is really positive. So it's the time to have the phase review. And the phase review, it's the project managers that will meet the stakeholder and maybe the customers or customer, and they will take a decision based on the key performance indicators. Are we still on the track? Are we still in the costs? Is the budget for the next phase something we can afford? So if all those elements are green or some might be orange, it is now during the phase review that the stakeholders will make a decision. They will decide whether to go or not go to the next phase. In our case, of course, they will say, yes, you are lucky in your project, we'll move to the next phase. That kind of phase meeting is also what is called a steering committee. And the fact that we are passing from one phase to another one is also called a phase gate. So now I'm going to link now the next phase to the one we just closed. So for this, I'm simply going to say here that the next phase can start once the go decision is made. So it will follow the task number 19 here. And for this, of course, that I need to define the phase 1 to be also auto-scheduled. So you see that the phase 1 we have here is really short. And the question is, what will it contain? So since I told you all the steps we have here in one phase, in each phase it can be the same, although we will be doing different things. So for that, to illustrate it, I will simply copy all those tasks here, copy, and I will come here down, insert a task, and here I will go and say paste. And we immediately have in phase 1 all those other tasks that we had already defined. And I will now here ident all those tasks like that they will belong to phase 1. I can close phase 1 and we see that all the elements are now within phase 1. And now I can remove that task. I did it, it's easier to locate the element. as you suspect, we can do the same for phase 2. So I will locate it like that. I don't have to create it again. And if I expand phase 1, we find all the elements here inside. And of course, I will need now to correct certain things, since in that phase 1, we do different things than what we were doing in phase 0. But the structure with initiation, planning, execution, control, phase review, and closing will be the same. I will now pass certain tasks in automatic, like that we will see that it will help to schedule everything in a nice way. We already see the effect here. You see that phase 1 is now following and is starting to develop here down. The key performance indicators, they can stay as manually defined, as is the phase deliverable and the go and no-go decisions. I will also say here that the closing meeting is following the go no-go decision, but this I simply say here that the predecessor is task 39. Like that, I have everything which is nicely scheduled here on the diagram. Now I think you guess, if I want to do phase 2, I just have here to select the element of phase 1, copy them, and here I can come and simply paste. And you've seen them. Of course, we have to do some corrections of the dates here inside and the predecessors to have them fit nicely. So I will do the same for phase 2. I let you do the one for phase 3, but I'll do it also, and we'll meet just after that. So now I've done the same for the phase 2 and phase 3. I closed all those phases like that. We can see on the Gantt diagram the duration of each phase. And you see that what we've done, we have a correct behavior of phase 1 following phase 0. And I corrected phase 2, but you see that here down, phase 3 is completely overlapping the other phases. So this is of course not correct, and it's due to some of the dates and durations that are not set well. If you're working with the file I've given you, those corrections will be already included, so you can jump ahead. There is one point that is giving us some issue here. You see we have to define, identify stakeholders. This will have as predecessors the go no go of the phase 2, which is the task 59. So I'm coming here down and I'm saying that it's task 59. And we are going to say that the macro planning is also following the task 65. Like that, we have those things that are removed, and we see that we still have some issues with the phase control, which is here down, and I'm going simply to change this, that saying that the phase control starts as soon as the phase is started, so it could also be related to task 59. And here, of course, the last thing, the closing of this phase, could come after the phase review, which is here, the 79. And this is correct, but what is missing, since it was a copy and it was manually scheduled, when you put anything as manually scheduled, dates are not replanned. So I move this to auto schedule and you will see that it is moved. So for that, I will now go and look at the complete project. I will close the different phases. Like that, now we can say that we are really in the correct situation. Looking at phase 3, there is maybe one point that I didn't discuss. It's why do we have in another phase also identify stakeholder and project charter. The reason why I leave this, it doesn't mean that you have to do it like that in your project. It might be that in certain project, it's almost like restarting a new project. Imagine, for example, in the example of the beach in Geneva, when you entered the phase of the opposition, the stakeholders started to be the different political party, the population. This was really important. Whereas when we were in the construction phase, those stakeholders were still present, but not as much as the companies that were building, the builders. So you see that depending on phases, you can have the same stakeholders, you can have new ones, some that go away simply. So that's the reason why you have a new step of identifying the stakeholder. I will now rename the phases that it matches our example of the beach in Geneva. So the phase 1, which is political. The phase 2 was the one with oppositions, and the phase 2 was the phase with the tenders, and finally phase 3, which is the construction. So instead of having the name, you could just have political, oppositions, tenders, construction. I think with this we have the phases as they should be defined. Now I want to see those different phases on the timeline. For this, I go into view because I want to see the timeline. So I select here the checkbox for the timeline and it comes. I will enlarge it a bit that we have more space. And now I simply go on the phase and I go down here and add it to the timeline. So you see, it comes like that. So I can do the following with the next one. And of course, you got it. We'll do it for all the 4 of them. We have the different phases. You see that the phase 2, the one of the tender, is overlapping the one of opposition. I left it on purpose like this to show that phases, they don't always have to wait the end of one phase to start the next one. Now I can color those different phases. So for that, I come here and you see that we can select some colors. So I will go and select the colors here in an upper grading way. So now we have the different phases on the timeline and color graded. So now I think that you saw how it is to build a complete project with different phases. You got also a lot of information about the different processes inside of phases. So you liked it, thumb up, share with your friend, subscribe to the channel because this helps me to grow the channel. And I hope to see you soon. So bye-bye.